Thank you so much for joining us for the Q&A for Shorts Program 3. Let me reintroduce our guests quickly. We have Malika, Director of Video Visit, joining us from Brooklyn, New York. Welcome. We've got Rayka and Sam, Directors of Are You Still There, joining us from Los Angeles. We've got Federico, Director of YORUGA, joining us also from Los Angeles. Gabriel from Motorcyclists Happiness Won't Fit Into His Suit, joining us from Mexico City. We've got Michelle and Daniel, Directors of Sales Per Hour, also joining us from Los Angeles. And we've got Johnson, Director of Only the Moon Stands Still, joining us from Los Angeles as well. So welcome everybody. We're so excited to have you here. We've been living with your films now for almost a year, just loving them. And it's always exciting to get a chance to actually talk to you about them. So I'm gonna start by asking you just with being a director, right? You have so many responsibilities and tasks that you have to deal with when making a film. And oftentimes for short films are even more, there's even more on your plate to deal with, right? So I'm just curious, did you have a large crew, small crew? What was it like making this film for you? Let's start with Michelle and Daniel.
Yeah, we had a pretty, I guess, small crew considering. It's a crew we've worked on a few films with, so it's kind of like our team in New York that we've used quite a bit. So yeah.
I mean, medium size.
Medium size.
Maybe like 15 to 20 people tops, but yeah.
Nice. And is that typical for like the types of films that you've made in the past?
I mean, the first film we started with a crew of 3, which was me, Daniel, and our cinematographer. And Daniel literally was doing sound. But I think they've developed as we've started to develop our films. And so I guess this was probably the biggest crew we've had so far. But again, is still kind of medium-sized considering.
Yeah, well, thank you. Federico?
Yeah, so yeah, mine was also medium crew, I would say, like around 15. And yes, that's also kind of like the same size from a short film I made before my thesis film, like 15 crew people.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, all your films look like, they're masterfully made. So you've got the right number of people, but it definitely seems like there's more people involved with the quality that you guys are delivering. So thank you. Sam and Rayka.
Well, our film is set in a strip mall parking lot, and we actually shot in a parking lot that was we didn't shut it down, so it was an open for business parking lot. So we had to be pretty nimble because of that. So I would say ours was also like around 15.
Yeah, maybe even less. But that's like the beauty of shorts is like keep it small and keep it close. Getting to make movies with your closest friends. Just having a really intimate setting. And I think a lot of times like that also really has a big effect on how you direct the film as well and how you interact with the talent. So it's very, very tight knit, and we're grateful for that.
Yeah, thank you. Gabriel.
Yes, I think in our case, I was precisely now counting in my head because I don't know exactly how many, but I think we were around the same, between 10 and 15. Yeah, I don't exactly know, but around there, around that number. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. And Malika, yours is a little different. Yours is a doc, so little.
Oh, phew! I'm so glad. I thought everyone was talking about. I was like, yeah, ours is a documentary, and yeah, our crew was much smaller. It was 3 to 6 people max with each shoot, and it was so I mean, largely because of the need for a certain level of intimacy. Obviously there are a number of scenes in there that are extremely intimate, and where ultimately only 2 or 3 of us needed to be in the room in order to maintain that. So yeah, but I am thankful to hear that everyone else's films were fictional. I was getting worried there.
Yeah, no worries. What about you, Johnson?
Yeah, I'd say ours is also a medium-sized crew. It's definitely the largest one I've worked with so far. But I think with every short I try to work with the same people, and then they end up bringing on more people. So kind of feels like a little family that continues to expand with each project that we do.
Yeah, that actually leads me into my next question. Looking at kind of the credits from all your films, it seems like you're working with similar people in each of your projects, which is really nice. You have that kind of shorthand with each other. So being that this is not your first film, what was different about this project than with your others? And was there anything that you learned with making this film that was new to the process for you? Michelle and Daniel?
Well, I mean, this certainly was the most linear narrative we've made so far, and also the most linear shoot. As a result, we shot 3 days back to back, as you often do, and we sort of combined locations that were supposed to be one store into 3 places, but somehow that didn't feel too bad. But yeah, I mean, that was a real, like, our other films have been a little more collagey, so we've gone back and shot more and done pickup days, and it's insane. So that was, this I learned that it's nice to do it this way, but also, fit the narrative, and so that yeah.
And we worked with a lot of friends, and we actually shot our film takes place in a retail store, and I actually, a lot of the people that I worked with in retail are also actors. So I used a lot of the people that I worked with at the store. So there was like a shorthand, even just in terms of how the store ran, that was really useful. So, I mean, always using your community and using your friends is the best, thing to do, I think, sometimes, especially with these kinds of budgets and these kinds of films.
Yeah, make the most out of what you can. Federico?
So one thing I'd like to mention is I've been working with the cinematographer for the last 4 projects I made, and the cinematographer is Sam Davis, who's a co-director and Are You Still There? And on this one, what was different is that I wanted to make something very short. So it was a 4 or 5 pages script, and when I showed it to Sam actually pitched to shoot it on film, which I haven't done ever in 16. And yeah, that process was very interesting, just because we didn't count with like the classic, coverage that you do in a short. So being very precise with the shot list was kind of like a different process, and I found that I loved it, being very precise with the shot list and not banking on covering everything. And
when you're working with film, you definitely have to stick to the script, right? Not a lot of improv. Sam and Rayka.
You can go.
Well, for us, we've been sort of working in documentary for a few years now, and it was kind of exclusively documentary, but our first love was always fiction. So, it's just really nice to kind of dive back into fiction and have a fiction project that, was a passion project and based on a real life experience that I had. So it was just really nice to kind of cross over for a minute, and we found ourselves actually really digging into that documentary filmmaking toolbox. A lot of the times while we were directing, it is a quiet, patient film, and we did have to be very sort of pre-planned and premeditated, but we definitely found ourselves using some of those doc skills on set when we really needed them.
Working with non-actors in a lot of moments where when something wasn't working, we would just kind of throw the script out the window and treat it more like a doc. So we talk about wanting our documentary work we push it to feel more like narrative work and being, more cinematic and sort of elevated, and our narrative work to feel more like documentary, more, lifelike.
Yeah, I think that definitely gives your film some of its tension, because it feels so like intimate and real, that when things are happening, you're just, you're feeling it like she's feeling it. So I think that going into that documentary toolbox was a really interesting and useful choice. So good job.
Thank you.
Gabriel. Oh, you're muted. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
All good.
In my case, this is the first film I ever did outside of school. So that was, I think, the biggest change, that we had no support of any kind. So, we got into a bank debt and these kind of things to be able to make it. And I think that was the biggest thing of doing something completely outside of any institution. Is the first time I have that opportunity, and that was really good. And in terms of the team, it was also interesting that I was kind of mixing the two worlds that I belong in, because I lived a long time outside of Mexico, but I started making films in Mexico. So my cinematographer was a cinematographer that I've worked with when I was outside of Mexico, but the rest of the crew was Mexican. So that was like an interesting clash to have these two worlds of mine, like mixing together and meeting up and see what happened.
Yeah, that is interesting. What did it work though? Like, what kind of clashes were there, or confusion?
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting because let's just say that German way of making things and Mexican way of making things are highly contrasting. And yeah, it did produce a lot of interesting situations. I think we all learned a lot from the other side, on the other hand.
That's great. Malika.
Yeah, Video Visit was shot mostly by a cinematographer I work with a lot, Nati Gamez, who's a kind of fiction-trained cinematographer who works mostly in documentary. And she's one of the best verite cinematographers I've ever witnessed. She's really brilliant in terms of, she has very instinctive sense of movement with the camera in a verite moment, i.e. in a moment where we don't know what's about to happen, and she'll just take quite bold decisions in how she moves the camera, and is nearly always just really brilliant. So she's someone I've shot a number of my films with, and she and I are continuing to collaborate regularly. I also work with a wonderful editor who I've worked with quite a bit before, Rabab Hajjaya. And it was really wonderful bringing her in as kind of outside eyes. I started working on this film in 2017, and it started out as a very, very different project and evolved significantly. In fact, changed quite a lot over the course of a couple of years. Even once I'd shot most of it, I essentially started to realize that the film's more or less a portrait of one institution through the lens of another institution, which was not how I'd seen it when I first set out to make it. And then, of course, it being documentary, really crucial collaborators were the staff at the Brooklyn Public Library, who really kind of told me what was happening and kind of brought me in on a lot of moments that I never would have expected to capture. And then a mother and son who allowed us to kind of film their video calls, which were very intimate. And really documentary isn't possible without people who choose to allow you in and who trust you to work with them. So yeah, I mean, I think, and on the point of what I learned, I think the biggest thing I learned was that I really set out to make a quick short film, because the Brooklyn Public Library is across the road from where I live. And I just learned pretty quickly that A, I can't do that. And B, there's just, often you just really have to follow the story that emerges, even when it feels like the whole thing is falling apart, which it did many times because of various issues. But yeah, I'm actually really glad that I stuck with it and essentially kind of discovered the story that emerged, and that is the final film.
That's great. Yeah, I think all of my favorite docs are the filmmakers you can tell really allowed the story to develop, and they didn't, dictate their thesis on what was going to happen and try to get to that point. So I think you did that very skillfully. So thank you. Johnson.
Yeah, so for this film, similarly to my previous films, it's set in one location. All of my films so far have just been set in single locations. I think it's like a box that I like to give to myself, and then it helps me have to think about like why shoot something in an exterior and an interior during the night or during the day. And for this one, specifically, it was a really interesting location that I was curious about. It's set in this like Chinese ballroom in Monterey Park, which is like in the San Gabriel Valley. And it's an area where I'd like to make films. My previous film was shot just actually like 5 minutes down the street. And that was a Chinese restaurant that, like for this film, we used the catering from that restaurant. So we're kind of building like a little kind of filmmaking community and, you know, kind of like network of places here. But in terms of differences, I think the length, this is definitely the longest short that I've done. So that canvas presents like this kind of different challenge of like figuring out how to fill it in an interesting way. And with my DP, Carlo Mendoza, we worked on my previous short together, and we had kind of made a set of rules that we wanted to follow. And for this one, for each rule that we made, we decided to try to break each one in a very small way, just to kind of, you know, figure out like, I guess, what our style is and like how it fits the story.
Like, can you give us an example of like a type of rule that you made that you tried to break?
Yeah, I mean, all of our shots, you know, they're locked down on a tripod, and for my previous one, like, you know, we would always pan for a very specific reason, and to always be following someone. This time we tried to see like what does it mean, or what does it feel like when we lose a character in the frame? Like, what if we don't do that? And then like, what if we're guided by like a feeling instead of a movement?
Cool. Yeah, thank you. Your film is stunning. So I love the rule breaking, and it definitely, you know, giving yourself a challenge makes you create things you never knew you could. So very good job. Thank you. So last question. I know we've just got started, but so you've all been living as artists in the midst of this global pandemic for almost 2 years now, right? What has being an artist in the difficult time been like for you? And did it impact production on your films at all? What was that like? You know, some of you may have been fortunate enough to start your films before the pandemic hit. Others probably were doing this in the middle of it. So Michelle and Daniel, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I mean, it's been not good.
It's been really hard.
Yeah, no, I mean, it certainly wasn't inspiring for me to have the time. It was hard to be sort of self-focused in a time where it's obviously very global and a trying time. We luckily shot before the pandemic, about 6 months before, I think it was a significant amount of time before. Wow. And so that was lucky, of course. But I think, hopefully that, you know, maybe there was a wider audience through the virtual film festivals and through the many means of, you know, and just by virtue of people staying home and watching lots of things. But yeah, it was hard.
Yeah, I think like as people in film, the thing that's been most sort of inspiring has been everything surrounding IATSE and the strike that they just announced. Like, I feel like that's something that's actually been the most sort of crucial part in thinking about the next work we want to make and how we consider, you know, the kind of environment and the set we want to create. And then, of course, you know, just sort of taking that leap outside of sitting on our asses for 2 years. I mean, not on our asses, but like, I mean, I was teaching on Zoom, so kind of on my ass, but yeah, just sort of like considering the kind of space we want to create as we embark on our next work and thinking about how that sort of, you know.
Yeah, in a way that this time has challenged everything. It too bleeds into the way we've made films, and hopefully will improve the way we make them in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, the pause that we were all kind of forced to take definitely makes you reevaluate what you want in life. And
Yeah.
I've been seeing so much of that reflected in people's films and reflected in, like, you know, labor issues, like you're saying. So, you know, if there's a silver lining, I think that's one of them. So
Totally.
you totally agree. Federico?
Oh yeah, well, I was lucky enough to shoot YORUGA with Sam like right before the pandemic started, like end of January 2020, and then pandemic happened and it was fucked up. Oh, sorry, it was bad. And but one beautiful thing that came out of it was with another friend I have, we made this short together that coming out from film school, you kind of like create this idea that like, because you get to experience as a director or producer like a mid-size crew production. So you think like, for some reason I had in my brain that like, okay, now on, like I cannot do less than that. Like you have to be, in order to be good, like has to be medium size. And then we made this project with my friend where he just shot it and I acted on it, and it was just the two of us and no rules, because we were not forcing people to be on our set because we were making it only the two of us. So it was great because we were just shooting during sunsets, like the most insane thing that you could not do with like their normal production. So it just and that reminded me that thing that like I feel like all of like these film students we have like when we go to film school, and which is to start moving, like making movies like in a playful way, not putting all these fucking stress and things that we put on ourselves. So that like playful aspect of it is what creates like like a lot of magic, I would say. So that was my learning from the pandemic.
I love that. I love the playfulness. That's great. Sam and Rayka.
The thing that really stands out to me, that's a big question, but the thing that stands out to me is just a big part of why we make short films is to get to share them inside theaters with other filmmakers. And so that part of the process, you know, with a film like this and its festival life has been very different. And so I know we're both really looking forward to coming more into a time where it's more common to have in-person screenings. And that's just really where I think most of the magic comes from in the process for us. So
those relationships and that community aspect of it, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're especially excited for this screening.
And
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Gabriel. Oh, turn your mic on.
Again, sorry.
No, it's all good.
Yeah, very similar to everyone's story. Like one year, nothing really moved forward at all. Luckily, I earn my living from teaching and studying, so it didn't really affect me that much in that sense. But for 1 year, somehow nothing in the creative department was coming out. It was very hard to find support and funds, and everything was kind of off. And then it started to improve, luckily, and on the other hand, it gave also a lot of space to. I was a bit overwhelmed by the noise in the world, and it gave space to finish editing this short film, for example, that I hadn't had a chance to do it because there was too much things happening all the time, and that feeling was kind of nice for me personally.
Yeah, well, that's nice. Makes sense. Malika?
Yeah, I was in New York, so definitely like the first few months, a lot of the first months of that period were like awful and very traumatic, I think. But I think as a result, it made me think a lot about, as you were saying, like what I want to be working on. And then I think work became a respite from a lot of that.
Yeah. Johnson?
Yeah, I think a couple of people had mentioned that they were teaching during the pandemic, and I also was doing that on Zoom specifically. And I was really, I guess, inspired by my students who, were making really beautiful personal films just at home. And I think I went into this process of making something feeling very like reinvigorated. And I think for me, like the community, like the Chinese American community in the San Gabriel Valley, like I think they, got hit pretty hard by the pandemic, especially our location. It's a Chinese ballroom. So, they were closed down for a large amount of the year. So being able to, shoot a film there and like, rent the location, bring money in, and also hire and cast people from the community, I think that was really great. And being able to give a lot of people like their first acting experience, and now being able to, bring them to the screening at AFI Fest, I think that'll be really special for them, and kind of like a light at the end of this dark tunnel of the year.
Yeah, I know that a number of you will not be able to join us, but I am excited that we will be able to see some of your faces in person. So thank you so much. Sadly, our time is over. I want to thank you all for being here today with us. Thank you to our audience. Please tell your friends to watch all these amazing shorts at AFI Fest. They are available to screen throughout the festival online. And then we also have the in-person screenings. So go on our website, fest.afi.com, to find out when they are and all about the rest of the films. And we'd love to hear from you on our social media. So #AFI Fest. And that's all. So thank you all so much for joining us. And thanks to the filmmakers for their time. Thank you.